Mean Old Lion Media presents Corner Table Talk.
Welcome to Corner Table Talk. I'm your host, Brad Johnson. Here we explore subjects related to food plus drink plus culture. For me, having grown up in the hospitality industry, I've lived at the intersection of food, drink, and culture since the mid-1970s. The view was a long one with many players, places, and experiences. A formative impression for me in the early 80s was the first time I wandered into Keith McNally's Odeon. I was taken by the room, and I soon became an avid admirer of his work and a patron at all of his places, including the one closest to home for me, Cafe Luxembourg on the Upper West Side. My guest today, Preston Clark, is the son of the late, great Patrick Clark, one of the true pioneers of American cooking. His obituary in the New York Times stated, quote, "He was a chef who helped lead a generation of Americans to embrace a new style of casual but sophisticated French cooking in the early 1980s, and then helped lead them back to the ingredients and preparations of their own country," end quote. Patrick was also the opening chef at the Odeon, which in 2020 celebrated its 40th year in business. And to my knowledge, I looked into this. I couldn't find another African-American chef that had been reviewed by the New York Times prior. And I think Brian Miller reviewed Patrick in the Odeon when he was there. So following in the footsteps of a father whose impact is as lasting as Patrick Clark's could be challenging. Well, Preston has been making a name for himself for some time. A third generation chef, Preston currently oversees the kitchens of Lure Fish Bar in New York City, Miami, and Chicago. I've never met Preston, so a special shout out and thank you to publicist extraordinaire Valerie Wilson, who brought Patrick to my attention and helped coordinate him joining me for the podcast today. So thank you so much, Val. It's really, really nice of you to do this. So preparing for today, I read a few of Patrick's interviews, and there's little doubt he knows his way around the kitchen. But he also exudes a kind of self-assured leadership that is only gained by having put in the work. I'm excited to have a chance to speak with Preston. Preston, nice to meet you, man, and welcome to Corner Table Talk.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure, man. Well, we kick things off with my short order questions. I don't have to explain that to a chef. You know what that means. These are easy ones for you. So tell me, man, what is in heavy rotation on your playlist? What are you listening to these days?
Heavy rotation on my playlist. Oh boy, I'm doing a lot of Stevie Wonder these days. A lot of Drake, a lot of Kendrick Lamar, a lot of Mozart, things like that. That's probably the most that are pretty much in rotation. A lot of Kendrick Lamar.
Can't knock those players. How about in the kitchen? Do you allow music while you're working, or do you prefer silence and only your voice to be heard?
I do allow music when we're working. It's kind of it's funny because in the kitchens that I came up in, there was usually no music allowed. And then as I started to get as my career progressed on, as I became a sous chef, and I was working in different kitchens. A lot of my friends started to have restaurants, and I can remember one in specific. It was a restaurant called Taylor. A chef friend of mine named Sam Mason's a pastry chef, and he had Notorious B.I.G. playing in the kitchen. I was like, "You have music in the kitchen?" So we definitely play some music in the kitchen. A lot of the times it's cumbia, sometimes it's salsa, but we definitely have a little bit of music in the kitchen. I think it just helps the troops to helps them to motivate to get done what they get done.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I've worked with some chefs that only want their voice heard in the kitchen, but it's nice when there's a little vibe and a little music playing.
Yeah, it's usually just my voice that you hear, but I never like to stop the music.
No. What's your footwear of choice? What do you wear at work on your feet?
Birkenstock, the Birkenstock Crocs. I bought my first pair in 1999 in Chicago, just prior to joining the Charlie Charters kitchen, and I've never worn a different shoe.
Comfort, pure comfort.
Pure comfort. You have the Birkenstock clog with Dr. Scholl's insole, like walking on a cloud.
Well, save the back and the knees, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so favorite New York City place for an after-work cocktail or bite to eat? Where do you like to go after work, man, just to chill.
Favorite New York City place for an after-work cocktail? I would have to say my favorite place for an after-work cocktail is a bar called Dante's. It's in Soho. Actually, it's in NoHo. It's in just north of Houston, not too far from the restaurant, and they make, I think, some of the best cocktails in the world. Dante's.
Is it a newer bar, or has it been around for a while?
It's been around for a little while. It's they have a great food menu there too. But the cocktails, the bartenders, the service is unbelievable.
All right, well, we got a little insider tip there. I like that. Dante's. All right, I'm writing that down. All right, Chef, so tell me, vacation spot you're looking forward to traveling to, assuming that you do take vacations.
Oh boy, yeah, it's been a while since I took vacation. I've definitely got out of the where I used to, be a martyr and never ever take vacations. But now I'm really trying to make sure I take the time for myself, because I make sure I perform much better when you take that time for yourself and you get a little chance to rest. I really enjoy the islands. I went to Barbados a couple of years ago and had the time of my life.
Yeah, Barbados is spectacular.
It's a beautiful beach, beautiful food, beautiful people, beautiful culture. I had great company, and I'm looking to return there. I had a blast there. Yeah, Barbados for sure, but definitely the beach, the islands. I'm definitely a beach guy. I like the tropics. I like the hot weather, the sands, specifically for vacation. It really makes me feel. I don't feel like I'm on vacation if I'm not looking at a palm tree.
Yeah, man, I love that. All right, hard question for you here, but true test. Celery or no celery in your lobster roll?
In my lobster roll, I like celery. I like to use a little bit of celery salt, but no celery. No celery for me. Yeah, no celery for me. I like. I almost prefer the just the style with really just warm, hot melted butter. But when you're doing the New England style, I mean, I know the debate you're talking about. But if I had it my way, I would go no celery.
Thank you. I'm a purist when it comes to lobster roll.
100%. You get the butter on that brioche bun. You grill it up. It's there's nothing better.
Yeah, I'm used to the big, thick chunks of lobster, some white pepper, some buttered, brioche bun, man, and good to go. That's what that. Yeah, unbeatable combination. So, yeah. All right, past or present would you most like to host at an intimate dinner party? And if you're doing the cooking, what are you making?
I always like to take this question and take it back to my father, because I'd love to be able to spend a little bit more time. My father passed away when I was 16, and I feel like I would not be the person that I am without my parents and without that guidance. And I would love to just have a few more conversations. So I would love to be able to cook, to be able to cook that dinner, and just to kind of hammer and see what he thinks about my cooking as I've progressed.
What are you going to make him?
Probably some sort of a whole fish. I would probably do all fish. Maybe not all fish, but it would be pretty like a heavy seafood menu. Start with like a crudo, move into some sort of a whole roasted fish with some sort of seasonal vegetables, and then maybe finish with the meat. Finish with maybe a game and maybe a meat. Nice slice New York strip, nice sauce over the top.
That's a dinner I would really wish that you could have, man. I'm sure he would be. It must be extremely proud of you up in the heavens above. So, all right, let's dive in here. So, am I correct, Preston? Are you originally from Brooklyn?
Yeah, well, born in Brooklyn.
So tell us a little bit about what the Clark household was like growing up.
All right. Well, we moved. Oh boy, that's a good question. It's fun to think about. So we definitely moved around a lot. I'm the oldest of 5, and so it was a very busy household. And my mother pretty much had a run of the household. It was myself. I have 3 sisters and a brother. And every time we moved, it seemed like there was another child. So when we moved from New York, we moved to New Jersey. We had my 3rd sister, who hung around in New Jersey a little bit in North Brunswick, and I had another sister, Brooke. Then we moved to Los Angeles, and that's when my little brother was born. No more children after that. Then we moved to Virginia. We lived in Virginia for a while in the Washington, D.C. area. And then we moved back to New Jersey. That's where I went to high school. And so my house was always very busy. Always very loud, a little bit messy sometimes, but everyone had chores on Saturday morning. Everybody had their Saturday morning chores, was clean the bathroom, clean the baseboards. Everyone had a day of the week that they had to set the table. There was a lot of times where we would help with the cooking. We'd start with browning the meat from my mother. It was just a hustle and bustle household. It was some of the more memorable times of my life. Very, very food centered, very family centered, lots of love, church every Sunday. And you'd wait for my father to get home. We didn't see my father so much. He was always working. He would come home, see him at, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, and then we'd see him on Sunday. Sunday was always a big deal. Sunday dinner was always a big deal in my house. So we would all gather around the table. My father would cook. If you drew dishes for that week, you were usually pretty upset because my father would come and it felt like he would use every pot and pan in the house. And so then you were stuck, help washing dishes. But it was always a team effort. But it's always very much a family focus, always centered around the family, centered around food, and just that's kind of that's what I remember. It was kind of fun to kind of draw back on these memories.
During the week, was dinner around the table? I know your dad was at work. What was that something that you did as a family every night during the week?
Absolutely, every night. My mother was a pretty accomplished cook also. She was, my parents actually met in culinary school. And so she was very, very good. And always dinner around the table, always all the brothers and sisters. And then on Sunday was the big dinner when my father would come home. And also my grandmother, my mother's mother would come by many times during the week.
I think that's just such a strong bonding time for family. And you learn so much, obviously, table manners, but how to split up duties and how to talk and sit right at a dinner table. And it just seems like
unbelievable. It's really like the time around where you learn about your family history, your culture. You talk about current events. You talk about everybody's day, how they're doing in the world. It's, it's unbelievable how much you actually learn around the family dinner table. It's super, super important. And I really try to impart that in my son, in my life now as often as I can, just, being able to share that information and being able to just enjoy each other's company and enjoy the family and be able to, get the information that you need to be successful as successful as you possibly can in the world today. But I really think it really starts around that family dinner table. It's a real big deal.
I agree, man. How old is your son?
My son is 9 years old. 9 years old. Christian is his name. He is the light of my life.
I bet. So obviously food and cooking became a real focal point for you at some point. But what were some of your other interests growing up, man?
Music, very much. I played a lot of instruments as coming up. I was very fortunate to be introduced to music early. I dabbled in a little bit in the violin, woodwinds. When I was in high school, I played a lot of saxophone. I played the bassoon. And so being able to read and write music was a really big influence. And, when I was younger, I thought I might have wanted to go that way, but that's not how it ended up happening. While definitely a passion, my passion for culinary and cooking and restaurants and being able to spread joy to people through food kind of took hold. And that's what brings me to where I am today. Music's never not in the background. I think that I'm about setting the vibe, and I think you can't. Music really helps to set the vibe. Even like if we were speaking about in the kitchen, helps to set the vibe. And I really do. It's definitely a second passion of mine. And when I get a chance, it's harder for me to be practicing. I picked up a guitar when I was about 24 years old, and so I'm able to practice that. I don't really have the time to set up a saxophone and play. I have a piano in my house, so I play the piano a little bit, but definitely music is definitely a second passion of mine that I really, really enjoy.
You're starting to sound like Stevie Wonder, man, playing all of those instruments from the violin and the guitar, man. That's pretty impressive. So as you mentioned, you're from a family of 5, and I don't know, obviously, if you all went out to restaurants as a family early on. That could be a pretty expensive bill for 7 folks going out. But did the family go out to eat dinner ever?
Yeah, we would go to all kinds of restaurants. The last one of the more memorable ones that I can remember was actually Windows on the World. Was at the top of the World Trade Center. We all went there. We had a great dinner, and then usually it's kind of funny. I remember my mother kind of, giving us the prep talk of how to making sure that we all behaved at the restaurant and not to speak until spoken to. And we would sit there, and I think everyone was very well behaved. And then once we got out of the restaurant, it was like chaos. It was all everybody let loose because everyone was very well behaved in the restaurant. We would go. I remember one year we spent Thanksgiving at Tavern on the Green. That was another same situation where everyone was. We got the prep talk. Everyone was very well behaved. Anytime anybody started to stray a little bit at the table, you'd get the side eye from my mother, and you'd straighten up real quick. But yeah, we would go out. When we did go out to eat, we would go out to eat as a family, and it was definitely some of the more memorable times of my family when we were younger.
Yeah, man, that's such a strong visual. I have this image of your dad. I'll get into it in a minute. I met him years ago, but I do have this very strong visual of him as just managing a family of young children, and how important, proper etiquette and public behavior would have been, especially in a restaurant setting. But what great practice ground, for developing that kind of skill and how to move around.
Being taught those mannerisms and that etiquette, even especially like going out to a restaurant, but it starts at the dinner table. And I think that it's at least for me, it's painfully obvious when you don't have that kind of exposure. I remember being almost appalled when my first year in culinary school, and people like who at least were claiming that their interest was in culinary, and this is what they decided to do with their life and pay all this money, but they had no idea about any kind of dining etiquette or anything. And I guess it's people come from different backgrounds, so you don't want to shame anybody. It's definitely something that comes from the home, and I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, and digging into your background a little bit, your grandfather was also a chef. So I'm curious, which side of the family, and where was the family originally from, and how did your grandfather become a chef?
So I know a little bit less about that story. His name was Melvin. He was there. This is again in Brooklyn. So they're in Brooklyn, and he worked for Charlie O's. He worked for the Four Seasons. I think that at the time he was just, when he first started, he was really just looking for a job, and he was able to get, the job as a dishwasher and then move up. And that's how he got into that, working for that specific group. And I think as he started to find success as he got a little bit older and moved around to different restaurants, and that's was I believe is the initial inspiration from my father. But yeah, I know a little bit less about that. I've been trying to explore, but there's a lot of that information is starting to get a little bit lost, as some of the people are no longer with us on that side of the family. And my aunt, she was a very young girl, and my father's father passed away very young. He was very young when his father passed away, the same way that I was, right around 16. And so a lot of that, a little bit of that information is hard to find. But I know that he definitely was a dishwasher, worked his way up in the Joe Baum era, working for restaurants like Charlie O's and the Four Seasons, and the family is definitely originally from Brooklyn. So it's a real New York story about, the hard work, dedication, making sure you keep your mouth shut, get to work, and do what you're asked, and then being able to seize an opportunity when it presents itself.
Sure, man, and what a fantastic pedigree, man. And yeah, I'd love to know more about your grandfather. That was very early on to have progressed as he did with some pretty big names. Joe Baum, obviously, a legendary restaurateur. Preston, I was very close to my dad, who I followed into the restaurant business as a teenager. He had a place on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I started, washing dishes when I was 16. And, fortunately had a business to move into and be employed and then learn the business from him. And we enjoyed an incredible relationship until he passed in 2007 at 82. As you mentioned, man, you lost your dad at 16. You're the oldest of 5 kids. And I believe, if I read this correctly, you had already followed him into the world of professional kitchens when you were, I think, about 16, just before he passed. And I'm curious, what impact did your dad's passing at 42 have on you and your family, your mom? I mean, what a big responsibility, 5 kids, and now she's a single mom.
It was devastating. That's no other word. It was devastating. It was definitely one of the saddest moments. One of the saddest moments I can remember in my life to date. And I think there was definitely a little bit of confusion. It was kind of funny because I can remember my feelings at the time, and then in hindsight, it's different. I remember being very much like wanting to be representative in the kitchen right after he died. So when people were there, I was making sure that everyone who came to the house was eating, and make sure that everybody was fed, and I made sure that all of the food was ready to go, and I remember, helping to lead and rally the cooks who were helping prepare the meals, and I was helping to prepare the meals for the funeral and for the wake and things like that. But yeah, it was definitely a hard time. Definitely a hard time for me. Definitely a hard time for my entire family. The youngest of the siblings, their memories are a little bit, because they were very young, 6 and 8, and so their memory, they have, while they remember the sad time, they don't have the same clear memory that like my mother and myself and my sister Aaliyah, the sisters right under me, remember. But definitely devastating. But not completely defeating. Definitely devastating, but not completely defeating. It's a real testament to my family. We're able to keep on keeping on, and we were able to maintain, and we were able to essentially just keep going forward, keep pushing forward, but also while looking back. Very important. So you look back and you get that inspiration, and you remember the lessons that you were taught, and you were able to take those lessons and apply them, and hopefully, eventually be able to apply them and find good success, I think, or at least what I think that my father would deem as success. And my mother definitely, my mother's very proud of all of her children.
I listened to an interview with you talking about your dad and how much more you learned about him and his influence after he passed and in the years since. And, I have to say, to have lost your dad so young, I really admire your ability to keep your life on track and to build a career, one that, I'm sure he would be so proud to see. This quote from you in an interview in Zagat resonated with me about your work ethic. And you said, my father used to say, quote, "What you do now sets the precedent for what you can do later," end quote. Very simple, but man, wow, right? So important.
Absolutely. And that's one of the models that I live by even to this day. And it's funny because, it's especially in the culinary world, but any world, when you're in the shadow of your parents, you don't want to be pigeonholed or labeled as oh, you're just successful because you're so and so's kid, or and I think there's a little bit of that you have to that you fight against, but there's undeniable knowledge that has carried me in so many different ways that that I'll always be eternally grateful, and we'll make sure that I pass it on to my son, and to anybody who is really looking to better themselves, for forward progression, for any type of success, whatever that success may be. There's many avenues, many roads to success, and whatever you define success, whatever that success may be, I think that if some of these mottos that you live by, what you do now sets the precedent for what you can do later, is a really big one. And I think if you follow that and you keep it in the back of your mind, it will prove to be unbelievably helpful, undeniably helpful.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. I love it when people tell me how much they loved my dad. It really doesn't get old for me. But, does hearing about the reverence that folks have for your father ever get old? Do you feel the pressure to live up to something because he was just such this big presence?
No, I used to. Not so much anymore as far as the pressure, because I feel like I'm able to really, I think that anybody who knows me knows that, while I do come from a very, very deep, pedigree of culinary pedigree in New York culinary pedigree, I think everybody who knows me, and especially anybody who knows me and also knew my father, can definitely see the difference. And I think that they definitely recognize that while coming from that great pedigree, I've definitely been able to cut my own chops, if that makes any sense, to be able to, I've done a lot on my own. And so I used to feel that pressure, and I used to be like, and I was more afraid of being pigeonholed as that, oh, you've only were able to attain this because of who you are, not because of what you've done. But I love hearing people, hearing the stories about my father and how revealed he was. It's unbelievable. It's just really testament. It's just a testament exactly to my family and the work that they were able to do, especially during the times.
I would say for sure. And anyone who's ever worked or even seen a professional kitchen that is successful work, you don't get handed that because of a last name. So you'll get run out of there so fast, you won't know what hit you. Man, I like to think, having been in the business for 40 years, that especially when it comes to people of color, that, I keep up with who's who. And, I admit, as the business has evolved and proliferated to some degree, that's gotten a little bit harder to do. But I'm almost embarrassed to admit, I didn't know about you And I wonder if the reason may have something to do with it being intentional on your part, that you haven't really sought, quote, celebrity chefdom. Is that intentional? Have you been intentionally low-key?
It's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily say it was an intentional, but it was definitely nothing that I was kind of sought after. I wasn't sure if these celebrity chefs were 100% chefs, if that makes any sense. I was very much wanted to keep my head down, and I was also very much aware of my lineage. And like I said, it was very important for people to realize that I didn't just it wasn't just because of who I was, but the work that I did. I've always been very private. I have been a little bit on the private. I always felt like the glory would come later, if that makes any sense. As far as being a celebrity chef, it was much more important for me to make sure that I had nailed all the techniques first, and I was able to have the knowledge and have the experience and the real deal. What it takes to be successful anywhere running a restaurant. And it's not so. I don't know if it's so much that I avoided it, but I was just, because I know what you mean. Because I've been kind of low key, kind of a low key guy.
No, clearly, man. I mean, you could certainly exploit your name a little bit, and be on Top Chef and be on TV shows, and maybe that's coming for you if you choose to. But I mean, I really take your point that you put the work in.
It was much more important. It was much more important for me to be able to put the work in, and it was much more important for me to have the respect of my peers. I worked, for Jean-Georges Kitchen, or for Jean-Georges for many, many years, about 7 years, and it was more important. It was always important for me to make sure I had the respect of the guys around me, and that that my respect was earned, and I was, seen as a true culinarian, and I never wanted to be pigeonholed into someone who's on TV, but then, you have the kitchen guys cooking in the back, and they don't know, the person who's on TV doesn't know how to cook. I would hear stories like that, and I would be like, and I think that, like I said, there's many avenues to success. I don't never want to shame anybody. There's people who are doing what they're doing. Just very happy with, being able to run the restaurants and being able to write the recipes and speak Spanish. So I'm happy to be able to speak Spanish to the guys and to be able to communicate what it is I'm looking for them to do. And I'm happy to be able to help other people realize their potential. I'm happy to be able to cook meat. I'm happy to be able to cook fish. I'm happy to be able, vegetables, but like experts in that cookery and the reasons of why it works. I really believe I'm very strong feeling about being true to the craft. It shows once you put something that we make and you eat it, and you can tell because it's delicious, and then you get that's the real glory that I think that I really like to be able to bring that joy to anyone and everyone, and that's the reward. That's the hard work behind it, and then you reach that reward, and I don't think that there's anything better.
Well, much respect to you for taking that approach. And to your point, man, yeah, everybody has their own course, and not to disparage anyone who's chosen a different one. But I really respect that, you rolled up your sleeves and you got busy and really truly followed in your dad's footsteps in the level of, expertise that you've attained. I met your dad in Los Angeles in the early 90s. He was doing an event with my old friend, Chef Joe Randall, on the roof at the L'Hermitage Hotel, Uncle Joe. And Joe was working with me on a restaurant at the time that I had in LA called Georgia. And for those that don't, Joe is a historian, Black culinary historian. His contribution is just, endless. He's worked with so many fantastic people, and he's really been a champion for the Black culinary contribution in the U.S. And he was a huge help to me at Georgia in working with our team there just to nail the Southern staples that we had on our menu, which, was essential for our concept. And he also introduced me to some great people like your father and Edna Lewis. Preston, the Black culinary conversation has been getting more attention as of late. Obviously, with High on the Hog on Netflix, Dawn Davis now, the editor over at Bon Appetit. There's a lot more conversation in the space. You said something, and I'm going to quote you here that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to get your take and if you would elaborate on it a little bit. But you said, quote, "It was very important for me to always strive to make sure that I had the respect of my peers. I wanted to make sure that I was a chef first, and then I was a Black chef. As a person of color, you have to be better. You have to shine, and you have to be able to get out in front and be noticed. But that makes you so much better. I'm not going to say that it starts to fade away, but you're always going to be judged on performance. Once you get to a high performance level, being best is great. So, as an executive chef of color and one who's making beautiful food that is not soul food, it's not traditional Southern food, and not that you can't do that, but that's not currently what you're doing. How do you view yourself in that conversation?
How do I view myself? That's a great question. Thank you for that one. I think I like to view myself as someone who can set an example for what is possible. I like to think that I think that a lot of times appearance is the first thing that human beings are going to judge on. And so in this country, people make mental shortcuts on what they view as the Black man or the Black person or the person of color. And you have to, I think that sometimes, over with so much history, I think within our culture, you almost kind of get bogged down. Like you think that, that you're almost destined to not have, to not be successful, kind of. Does that make sense? And I don't, it's not true. I think that I like to view myself as part of that conversation as an example of like what is possible and the hard work that goes behind it, and that with that hard work you're going to hit tons of obstacles, and you're going to hit obstacles, and there's going to be nasty racist things that come your way. But if you keep your head down and you keep on going, then and nail the performance at the end, the performance and the results is really what you're going to be judged on. And so the obstacles are going to come regardless. They're always going to come, and you're going to have to jump through hoops, and you have to do things that you don't want to do. You don't want to do anything that you don't want to do anything that you don't want to do. That's completely outlandish. But there's going to be things where you're like, I have to do this. I don't really want to, but if you do it anyways. And I think it's really important that if you maintain that consistency and you keep pushing, that eventually there's no choice but the breakthrough, and it doesn't matter. And then you're not just the son of a famous chef, or you didn't just get the job because we were trying to fill a quota, or we were just trying to and make sure that we meet our diversity and inclusion goals. You're able to show the results, and then you have the results, and no one can take that away from you. And that's where I like to view myself as part of that conversation, as someone who helps to set an example of exactly what's possible, particularly with the hard work and despite any obstacles that come your way.
And I so admire you, and having been in the restaurant industry and felt the current, the upstream challenge with trying to impress upon young brothers and sisters to pursue careers in the culinary arts. We've been slow to adapt to the possibilities in this industry.
There was a point in history where we were shunned. We were always in the kitchen, so that going back into the kitchen was like, we don't want to do that. We want to, and it's, you can understand that, but you can understand that logic, 100%. But I think, if it's really a passion, if you really want, if that's something that you really have your sights set on, it's never going to be without the hard work. It's never going to be without the obstacles that are in your way, but it's definitely possible.
And it's such an inspiration, man, to see you, and I'm sure you will definitely inspire a whole new generation to follow in your footsteps. So let's talk about your current position as the executive chef of Lure's 3 locations, including Soho, Miami, and I believe Chicago recently opened. I've known John McDonald, the CEO of Mercer Street Hospitality, since Merc Bar.
About 25 years, he tells me. Good friends, you guys.
Yeah, that's my man. And, John's got a great eye for design, vibe, and obviously talent to you, sir. So tell me how the opportunity came about, Preston, to work with John.
Well, I was in between jobs. I left. Where was I? I was at John George for a little while. I went to Northern California. I opened up a restaurant for Sammy Hagar, Tyler Florence in Mill Valley. I came back to New York, and I was working at a restaurant called Resto and the Cannibal. And I left there, and I was actually my son was just born, so I was actually at home spending some good, really great time with my son, and just kind of getting my house in order. And I was looking for a job, and I was hired by John. And at the time, there was a chef here, Josh Capon. I was working with him, and I've been here for almost about 8 years now. And just as once I took the job, and it was kind of funny. They were in the process of opening another restaurant, Bowery Meat Company, and so once I got here, pretty much left. They were really starting to, once we established a trust that I was going to be able to handle the restaurant pretty much on my own. They were able to, just apply their focuses elsewhere, and I think when they refocused on lore, from the other projects that they were doing, and they were able to see what was going on, I think that they were very happy. With just staff, with the product that we're putting it out, that was pretty much the beginning of the super positive relationship that I have, and at that point, then you're able to establish that you're serious and you mean business. Then you're able to get into the parts of the relationship where you share the ups and downs and what's happened over the past year, over the past couple of years in the culinary industry, the direction that we're looking for the restaurant to go, and then you're also able to I'm able to learn, and I'm able to get a different perspective on a whole host of different issues or ideas or concepts, from a highly seasoned restaurateur that I'm just able to add to my knowledge, to my wealth of knowledge, which is unbelievable. And John's been doing it all over. Merc Bar, he's been doing so many things, so there's so much knowledge there, and to be able to have access to that is awesome.
Yeah, man, you're working with one of the best guys in the business, no question about that. So, obviously this past year has been, crazy challenging for everyone, and those of us in the hospitality industry especially. I think I read that Lure in New York City stayed open during the pandemic. Is that the case?
We closed for about 2 months. We closed in March when everybody closed. We closed from March to May, about the middle of May. And we reopened, a very small crew. We got the phone call. I think a lot of guys were very happy to get that phone call, and we got right back to it. We started with curbside dining, takeout, delivery, and then we did some sort of a partnership or deal with Beyond Burger. And we were making Beyond Burgers for the frontline workers, and we were maybe 5,000 a day. I'm sorry, 5,000 a week. 5,000 a day, 5,000 a week, and we were having them delivered to the hospital so the frontline workers could, were able to eat and keep on doing what they're doing. And it was definitely hard work because there was only very, very limited staff, but it was great. It was great to be doing what we do, and I think it was really great for the guys to be able to get back to work. So they could keep on get their income and keep taking care of their families and taking care of their responsibilities. I think it was great for the community to see that the restaurant was still open. Because the restaurant's a real fixture here in the community. And we closed for about 2 months, and then we just kept on going, and we've been open ever since. And I think it's another testament to John, because I think at that point, especially in the early days, in that first month of being open, and the first couple months of being open, you have to realize, with the rent bill coming in and these things, the restaurant is operating at a loss. But the ability and the desire to be able to keep going, I think, is a real testament to the strength of our organization, because it's important. It's important for us. It's important for me. It's important for the guys that I'm working. The guys that work for me in the kitchen. That we still had a place to go to, and they still had their jobs. And it's important for the business also. It's important for the customers to see that the restaurant is still open. The restaurant is still trying to push through, And like tons of hard work. I mean, it was one of the hardest times working. I think overall for the benefit of all in the end.
Really, I think the pandemic, as unfortunate as it was and continues to be in some cases, the camaraderie and the reverence, I think that restaurants got celebrated in a way that maybe I think a different level of appreciation for the important place in the community. Do you feel that, Chef?
Absolutely. I think people love to go out to eat. People love to go to their neighborhood restaurant. They love to go to their neighborhood corner coffee store. It's a pillar of social interaction for humans, I think. And I think that for too long, people have looked down on the restaurant industry and have ridiculed it, and you don't want to be the guy that drops fries, and it's nothing, and I think that there's a brand new appreciation for it, where when we're not here, you really, really miss us, and I think that awakening is beneficial for everybody, and I think that I'm very happy that we're back. I know all of my guys are happy that we're back. We're like people who work. It's a special type of person that works in a restaurant, because you're really it's kind of selfless. You're really there for the guests. You're really there for the other people. And I think that the pandemic, although how horrible it is, some of the good things that came out of it was this new appreciation for restaurants and restaurant workers and what they mean to us and what they mean to our communities and our cultures as a whole. It's a new awakening, and I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, man. Well said. I couldn't agree with you more. So, Chef, some places, restaurants, that is, have that magic, right? Places like the Odeon. 40 years. You just don't get to be a 40-year-old restaurant unless you've captured something pretty special. And pretty much almost everything else that Keith McNally touches. But, John McDonald has a similar taste and aesthetic and growing portfolio. But can you describe from your point of view what that elusive ingredient is in a restaurant? Obviously, there's food, there's service, and there's decor. But some places, man, just have that something else. How would you define that?
This is one thing I'm really trying to get down to the bottom of myself, because it really works. We're looking at what that formula is, and it's a lot of different things. It's the vibe, it's the food, it's the music. It's the atmosphere, it's the decor, it's the sum of all of those things. Is really what makes it. It's the sum of those really. So it's sometimes it's loud, it's fresh, it's sexy, it's nice. You can bring your family. It's a lot of different things, and I think it's definitely a winning formula for sure.
And I would add to that maybe analogous to the theater business in that we have to do it nightly, right? Last night's performance has no bearing on today if you don't do today well.
100%. And that's where that performance comes in. And if you can nail that performance, and you're going to be judged on those results, and you have to be able to nail that, and then you can keep on going forward. What you do now sets the precedent for what you can do later.
The pandemic gave us a lot of time to contemplate, our connectivity to each other, the planet, how we live our lives, operating a seafood focused concept. What issues are you concerned about, the effects on our oceans, overfishing, climate change, plastic in the water? What issues have your attention?
The overfishing and the ocean pollution is probably one of the foremost ones, because it's really, and we're really looking for these solutions. We're looking for solutions, and I think restaurants, especially seafood restaurants, are looking for solutions. But the ocean pollution and the overfishing is a really big one, because we're really trying to find that symbiotic balance. It's all about the balance. If we can find that balance, I think that we'll be in a good place. But I think that there's been so much devastation. Really focusing on the ocean pollution and overfishing, are some of the, I don't know if you've seen this new Netflix series called, I forget what it's called, Seascapers, but they really highlighted some of the atrocities that are going on in some of these restaurants.
I have seen that. Yeah, it's unsettling. because I, like you, I also like swimming in the ocean. Well, now I'm so grateful that that Valerie put you on my radar. I'm definitely coming to check you out when I'm in New York, have a lobster roll or something else. But it's really been a pleasure to talk to you, Preston, and thank you so much, man, for your time today.
Thank you very much.
So here we go, how we move. Ambassador Shabazz is in the house this afternoon. What's happening, Ambassador? How you doing?
Well, I'm not in your house. You're in Los Angeles now. I'm in the bluegrass house. But I'm here at the corner table.
Yeah, good to have you here. So, Sir Preston Clark, there were bits and pieces of that conversation that reminded me of you and your family. You know, obviously having lost your dad at such a young age, and, you know, the number of kids in the family, but the legacy, just the whole family orientation that he spoke to. But just a really, really brilliant chef and talented young man. What were your impressions?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. The more he spoke, the more I felt a real union, and that the legacy, not that everybody knows his family's name, but really how the domestic side of the threshold of their house functioned, how his mother and father, what the siblings were engaged in, what mattered most. I mean, he's a real testament to where hospitality is not just a business or an industry, but it's a way of life. The etiquette, the dedication, the commitment, the fact that fewer know his name directly and yet are impacted by his dedication. You pointed it out. And as, the Say It Loud founder said that he had been in the restaurant and you don't even realize you're eating his food because what he does is creates that experience for one another. I can't wait to go when I get to New York, and I'm sure the menu is going to be superb, but I'm really looking forward to going just to be in the atmosphere based on the nature of the gentleman I heard. You opened by saying Sir Clark. That's what I felt. The real dignity of great-great-grandparents before him, before you knew anyone's name in the Clark line, really bequeathing an integrity to a young brother who continues to serve in a way that includes both his family and the population. You know, it's really, yes, you're correct. I felt a lot of kinship with him, but I would imagine most people would. You know, he's the metronome of character that we need to be around more, no matter what the industry is. I would imagine that the nature that we just listened to, no matter what industry he chose, you would gravitate to him.
Yeah. And, the correlation between doing high-end cuisine, his background, classical music, the musicianship, it all kind of goes together for me once you speak to him and get a real sense of his personality, right? Right.
Because it's not just orchestrated. It's just really, it's the food. It was the early beginnings. It was how that garden was tended to when young, the collaborative journeys that he said that they would go to, the music that they would experience, the cities that they would live in, the engagements. Those things also remind me of how my mother sustained and maintained. My mother was definitely an activities guru, and exposure was key. And so it's evident in who he is and how he does what he does. And when he talks about the variables of kinds of music that inspire him, it's because I think his breadth is that broad, right? You know, you can move and groove in anything as long as he's around that food or that thing that makes him smile that he has inherited naturally and that we get to be the direct beneficiaries of. I also appreciate the service component that engaged him and Lure during the pandemic. And while he may have a real signature for seafood, that he's also concerned about the impact, the pollution on the environment. All of those things make me want to learn more about Chef Clark.
Yeah, as you were speaking, I'm just picturing your mom having you and your sisters moving around in lockstep. I can only imagine the order
Let me tell you
that she maintained.
We were like ducklings entering a room.
Yeah.
Only my mother had a tendency to be late. And, I'm known for being absolutely early and a stickler for time. But we would wind up in a place behind her. And I was tall when little. And so, I always felt like I could be seen walking in late in lockstep. My mother even had clothing that, we were always kind of like in a dye-lot hue of whatever her choosing was. But, the thing that made me a jack of all trades of sort, and not a pat on the back, but you didn't get to do all of it, but exposed. And when he started to talk about the various ways in which he had been engaged, he and his siblings, real intentional. And I think when we talk about legacy, as you concluded the interview with, we should all be mindful of that. We all have legacies. It doesn't take someone knowing your name to know that there's something that you stand for, that you're in the world to represent, that there were sacrifices before you, and no matter the hardships or how you interpret them. Some people think that there's a measure to what warrants a legacy comparative to someone else, and it's not. And no one could have known, his father and grandfather could not have known that their grandson would be someone whose name would be so celebrated today. In those days, it was just a day's work and doing your best at it and representing it as your father and anyone else in this listening audience, and mother. I mean, I know both of your parents, until they were transitioning, and I'm sure in heaven, they are still at work making sure that their offspring, and that's what I would say to all ancestors, we have to engage them. They want the best for us all day.
Well, I feel that, and I feel their presence. So thank you for that. Before we let you go, anything on your radar that you want to share with us?
Well, I have quite a bit. I don't know if we have enough time because I really was moved in speaking about Chef Clark, but I think what I am going to talk about soon in other segments is the large growing expat population around the globe. And that includes people of color. Very often in the past, it didn't always look like us. We didn't identify with it. But this journey to be part of the global family. And it's not just the seniors, it's young folks. There's an average between 25 and 75 years old, a real navigation of people claiming new locations to not just go and retreat and vacation, but to set up shop. And I look forward to giving more information about some of those significant and unique journeys that people have secured over just in this last year. When you talk about the devastation of the pandemic, but also the innovation. And people just sort of threw out the water with the baby with the bathwater, and started again, rebooted, and found ways to eat well, live well, treat oneself well, being entitled to all of that. So yes, I'm going to come on and talk about real movement around the globe, how people are engaging and downsizing in order to venture into new spaces.
Well, that's why we call this segment "How We Move" with Ambassador Shabazz. So we really we look forward to hearing about that and engaging in that conversation with you. So please do. And in the coming weeks, we'll be hearing more. So, Ambassador Shabazz, thank you so much for joining us today. Great
My
to
pleasure.
see you, and you be well. Get out there and get
All
some
right,
sun.
yeah, right. Have a good one.
Corner Table Talk is hosted by Brad Johnson, produced by Brad and Linda Ailes Johnson, associate producer Ariel Mancebo, theme music Life Goes On by Bryce Vine, executive producer Ken Johnson. Find the Corner Table Talk podcast where you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, and leave a comment. Corner Table Talk is a Mean Old Lion Media production.